Good morning. You know it's a worry when the minister stands up to start his sermon at exactly the same time that he's supposed to be finishing and sitting back down. Luckily for you, I'm not a minister. Your lunch will be safe. All right. It's not often here in Tasmania we can say the weather is better than that in Queensland. But today I believe it is, so we spare a thought for those people. I've got a cousin that's in the thick of it at the moment, and I sent him a text last night, and I don't know if he has phone reception, but he hasn't responded yet. But we just spare a thought for those that are getting more than their fair share of rain. We'd like a bit of it. All right. I better get started. Let me ask you a question to start with. What does the 9-banded armadillo from the southern states of the USA, the red squirrel from the UK, and a chimpanzee from Africa, what do they have in common? They're all animals. What are you saying, Narelle? No. God created them all. That's not quite the answer I'm looking for. You're all right, but all right, for the sake of time, I'll help you out. Leprosy. The case of the armadillo, they know it carries leprosy. They know it develops leprosy because they've got armadillos with leprosy. They also have documented evidence that people have caught it from the armadillo. So kids, if your parents come home with a pet armadillo, send it back. You don't want one. Hang on. Armadillos are definitely out. The red squirrel, they know it can carry leprosy. They know it can develop it because they've got squirrels that have got leprosy. And from all the studies the scientists have done, they're pretty sure it can pass it on to people, but they don't have any documented cases of where it has. So a squirrel, pet squirrel? Maybe, maybe not. The chimpanzee, they know it carries it. They know it develops it. They've got chimpanzees with leprosy. And from all the studies that they've done, they're actually not sure that it can pass it on. So kids, if you want a pet, the chimpanzee is it. Okay? One thing that they do know is that most people that have ever caught leprosy have got it from a bacteria that lives in the soil. A bacteria that lives in the soil. Approximately 95% of the world's population is actually immune to leprosy and can't get it. Despite popular belief, it's not highly contagious. It just isn't. You get it through droplets passed on from the nose and the mouth, and apparently you've got to be exposed to these droplets for quite some time. So, standing next to someone with leprosy or shaking their hand or giving them a hug is apparently quite okay. You're not going to catch it. The report I read said you could even share a meal with them. I don't know if I'd be sharing the same spoon, but it's not highly contagious. Each year, approximately 250,000 people around the world get leprosy. And it's curable. Apparently a concoction of drugs taken for a year or so, and you're cured. I don't know what the drugs are going to do to you, but you won't have leprosy. It has an incubation period, on average, for about 3 to 5 years, but it can take up to 20 years for this to fester away inside you before it comes out. I'd imagine that would make it really difficult to work out where you actually got it from in the first place. Let's now wind the clock back a couple of thousand years to Matthew chapter 8, verses 1 to 4. Matthew chapter 8, verses 1 to 4. A very well-known little passage. Nothing we haven't heard before. When he had come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. And behold, a leper came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Then Jesus put out his hand, touched him, saying, I am willing, be cleansed. Immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus said to him, see that you tell no one, but go your way, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded as a testimony to them. Now, as we know, Jesus was up on a mountainside preaching and teaching. He's come down. He's developed a bit of a reputation. People enjoy listening to him. So the crowds follow him wherever he goes. So he's come down off this mountain. He's strolling along a path with a crowd of people following him and around him. And a leper decides to approach him. Now, 2,000 years ago, there was no cure for leprosy. They thought they knew a bit about it back then, but they really didn't know much at all. And there was no cure. They thought that it was highly contagious. And you can understand from the time frame that it takes to develop inside you, they wouldn't have known where it had come from. People that started to develop symptoms of leprosy, well, the second someone saw it, you're out. Out, going, gone. They were not allowed to be around other people. They weren't allowed in the towns or the cities. They had to go and live in what the Bible called a desolate place. If they were lucky, they found themselves in a leper colony where at least they had some company. As their skin condition got worse, the discoloration would turn into lumps and bumps. The lumps and bumps would turn into sores and lesions. These sores and lesions would fester and ooze with pus. Sounds like a great thing to have, doesn't it? Did I mention the smell? They reckon you could smell a leper from quite some distance. The nerves under the skin would die or become damaged. And so these lepers would hurt themselves without even realising that they were hurting themselves. And you could imagine the type of complications that just that alone would produce. It's not a very nice condition to have. Pretty much say your goose is cooked. You just wouldn't want to carry on, would you? What would be the point? There's really not a lot of hope. Leviticus says a leper must tear their clothes, have their hair out, and shout, unclean, unclean, wherever they go. You can imagine the sight of this person. Just the skin alone, let alone the smell. And their clothes, this pus would soak into their clothes. And I don't even know what words to use to describe how they would look. You don't want to be anywhere near them. So we've got this bunch of people walking along with Jesus, and we've got this leper starting to approach. Now you can imagine the commotion that might cause. These people, they didn't really want to be anywhere near a leper. This leper wasn't supposed to be there. I'm assuming the leper's shouting out, unclean, unclean, as he approaches. I'd imagine the people would become extremely upset with the idea of this leper coming towards them. Wasn't that long ago, during COVID, that if a person walked into Bunnings without a mask, there were multiple staff members and customers ready to lynch said person if so needed. You could imagine that these people were shouting things at this leper, using words that I probably won't use standing here at the pulpit. They probably told him where he could go and how he could get there in no uncertain terms. But I highly doubt that they actually physically tried to stop him. I can't imagine any of them standing in front of him, letting him get close enough, let alone grabbing hold of him and saying, hey, you're not supposed to be here, out you go. They just wouldn't have done that. Would have been like the parting of the Red Sea as he got closer and closer. This leper, I reckon, is taking a big risk as he approaches Jesus. But approach he does, and he falls at Jesus' feet, and he worships him and calls him Lord. Does this leper know who Jesus is? Does he know that this is the Son of God? Does he know he's the Messiah? You could argue that both ways. You could argue that he does know. He falls at his feet, he calls him Lord. The Bible says he worships him. We know that Jesus had been teaching and preaching, building a reputation. This leper's probably heard of what Jesus can do. And he might well be believing some of the rumours that this very well could be the Messiah. Regardless of whether he knows or he doesn't know exactly, the leper most certainly gives Jesus the respect as though he does know he's the Messiah. He falls at his feet, worships him and says, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. If you are willing. Now, I love that line. That's one of the most beautiful lines in the Bible, I reckon. Because to me it says, Lord, I will love you no matter what. My love for you is not based on whether you give me what I want or not. It's based on who you are and your unwavering, steadfast love for me. He's not in it for the rewards. He's in it for who Jesus is, who God is. Similar to Shadrach, Meshach and the other guy. Now, I say the other guy because I don't reckon I've ever been able to pronounce it correctly, and since I'm the one standing up here, I'm going to go with the other guy. What did they say? They wouldn't bow down. What did they say? Our God will save us. No, it's not what they said. Our God can save us, but even if he doesn't, even if he chooses not to, I'm still not going to bow down and worship you. Their faith wasn't based on them getting what they wanted. Their faith was based on who God is and his unwavering, steadfast love for his people. That's what it was based on. It appears that the leper possibly knows there's a bigger picture. It's not about his will, it's about God's will. He doesn't make any presumptions as to whether he actually will be healed or not. I'm sure he was hoping, but he didn't make a presumption. Now in verse 3, as Jesus puts out his hand to touch this leper, and Jesus says, I'm willing, be cleansed. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. Could you imagine the gasp of horror as Jesus puts his hand out to actually touch a leper? As they assume that Jesus is about to become unclean. Jesus knew what the law said about touching lepers. He knew what it said, he knew why it said it. He knew what the crowd was thinking. Not only could he hear their voices, he could hear their thoughts as well. So he knew exactly what they were thinking. But such is the power of our Creator. The crowd saw stench and filth, and they saw no hope whatsoever with that situation. Jesus saw exactly the opposite. Jesus saw a man full of faith and humility. And Jesus was willing to do what nobody else will. Jesus has looked down through the ages to the end of time, and he says it's worth it. He'd do it again. It's worth it. He says it's going to get a little messy. There'll be some filth and there'll be some stench, but it's still worth it. Jesus can fix that. Such is the power of our Creator. He can make all that right. Not only is he willing to do what nobody else will, but he does what nobody else can. When Jesus says, I am willing, It means exactly that. He is willing to fulfil every promise he's ever made to all of us. I'd say he's more than willing. I say he wants to shower you with his love and with his blessings. Now, Jesus tells this clean, healed man, who is probably still wearing torn, stinking clothes, not to mention his hair, to go and show himself to the priest and offer a gift. And we know he does that. But Jesus also says in verse 4 to tell no one. Don't tell anyone. You go there and you offer that gift, but you keep your mouth closed. Keep it zipped. Say nothing. We know from the other accounts of this miracle in Luke and Mark that that's not what happened. He went off to the priest, all right, but he's blab, 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 blab all the way. Probably telling everyone he came across. And I'm not justifying the guy, but really, who wouldn't? You're in this situation, there's absolutely no hope whatsoever, and all of a sudden, you've got your life back. Who's going to keep that quiet? But there was consequences for Jesus. He wanted him to keep quiet, and he didn't. Jesus knew. Jesus knew when this leper approached him. And when he put his hand out and touched him, he knew that this leper was not going to keep it quiet. He knew that the leper was not going to obey him. But he healed him anyway. He did it anyway. Why? Because he was worth it. So when you and I come humbly to the feet of the Jesus, we praise him for who he is, worship him for what he's done and what he's doing and what he will do. We can rest in the assurance that he looks at us and he says, you're welcome and you're worth it. Thank you.